What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. Time to talk about Airbnb. This is a company that we covered right when they went public just a couple months ago, it seems like. And now they reported their full year outlook, and we'll take a look at what's going on. We'll jump into the numbers, and the stock is reacting positively to the news. Now, this stock has been as high as about $208 just more recently, and now we're sitting down here at about $183, but it is bouncing off the lows, and it is kind of at a key support level. So we'll talk about that. Now, let's talk more broadly about Airbnb. Obviously, they're in that sector of the economy that has just been decimated by the pandemic over the last year. I want to show you something here. So we have nights and experience book. We have Q1 all the way to Q4 of 2020. So this was before kind of everything got started. Maybe the tail end of Q1 had some impact of that. And then Q2 was just decimated. Like most of the major states, New York, California, Florida, had some kind of lockdown, some kind of shutdown. Things were just not normal at all. And you see here, you went from $57 million nights booked way down to 28. Now you had a big bounce back because if you recall in Q3, things started to look better out here in California. They started lifting restrictions across other parts of the country. New York especially started lifting things, and some states didn't really have any impact at all. And it looked like, hey, maybe this thing is going to go away. And look at the snapback. I think I even took a vacation in Q3. I think I even stayed at Airbnb property. Look at that. It just bounced all the way back up to 61 million. And then obviously we headed into Q4. And the darn thing came back, and we had shutdowns, and we had, travel kind of restricted, certainly from the international perspective, but also state to state. There definitely was some impact there, but it still came in pretty strong. 46 million nights and experience book, but we see here for the full year down 41% over the previous year. When we get over to the statement of operations here, we've got the 3 months ended here at 19 over 20, year ended here 19 over 20. We see here the impact of the quarter. We were at 1.1 billion. This was before the company was even a public company, all the way down to $860 million in revenue. We see for the year, they actually had a down year, which is really unique for kind of this startup, kind of hyper growth, kind of IPO stock. It's weird to have a down year, but I think we can all understand that. They went from 4.8 billion down to about 3.4 billion. So, minus out what is going on the top line, on the nights, I think we can all assume that if the vaccines and things like that go well and all that stuff happens very nicely, then a company like Airbnb probably going to get back into growth mode. I think what you want to pay attention to here is on the total cost and expenses. They have all these costs here. They went from 1.4 billion all the way up to 3.9, almost $4 billion just in 3 months. $4 billion. You're going to look here. They spent $2 billion just on product development, but it's not the full story. We'll get to that in a second. Now, year ended 5.3 up to about 7 billion. That led to massive loss from operations. You see, last year they lost $327 million. This year, just a light $3.1 billion. Last year, $501 million loss. This year, for the full year, $3.6 billion loss. Now, not the full story, because a lot of these expenses come from stock-based compensation. A lot of these young tech startups and companies, they compensate their employees by stock-based compensation. We see on the product development side, just in the quarter, $1.8 billion of this $2 billion. So only $200 million of that is actual cash. The other $1.8 billion is in stock-based compensation. Now, when we get over to the cash flows, we'll see more evidence of that, and that'll really give us a sense of how Airbnb. Before we get there, let's take a look at their balance sheet here. We've got cash and cash equivalents here. We've got, at the end of the year, call it $5.5 billion in cash and another $100 million in marketable securities. That gives us total current assets here at $8.9 billion. I think if you would assume that the balance sheet is sparkling on a recently IPO'd company, you would be correct. Now, we do have $1.8 billion in debt sitting here on the balance sheet, but not that, it's really not that big of a deal. When you factor in, you got about 5.5 in straight cash and another billion in marketable securities. This company is doing pretty good on the balance sheet side. I think that's expected though. Now, here's where things get interesting with Airbnb. Then we'll jump over to the stock chart and we'll see maybe you can buy this stock at a low price right now. Cash flows coming in at remember, we pulled down our net income on the cash flows. We lost a big time $4.5 billion, but we know that's not all cash. They had this boom, $3 billion worth of stock-based compensation. So on the cash flow sides, you actually get to add that back in because look, shares of Airbnb is not dollar bills. And so you get to add that back in. And we see here, we get to a lot of costs getting added and subtracted. When it comes down to it, net cash used in operating Airbnb for the full year came in at $629 million. Okay, they had a rough year, in my opinion, from an earnings perspective. So when you factor in on the cash side, we've got a cool, we'll call that $6.5 billion. And in a really, really bad year, they burned through about $630 million. This company is well positioned. If things can turn around and turn around rather quickly, probably in a good position to start to turn, maybe not an operating profit, but definitely at positive cash flows, because you see last year, they were positive cash flows at $222 million. We see down here at the financing activities, we have, this is where the fundraising of the IPO and all this other stuff happened. They basically raised $2.9 billion. That was what they benefited from that IPO process, minus some other stuff that went on. Now, moving over the stock chart, this thing bounced not right on a critical level, but very close. I have some lows that were made back in February, and we are sitting here. I'm actually on a 15-minute chart on this one because we don't have a lot of data with Airbnb. They recently went public, so I'm on a 15-minute chart to kind of give us some nice view here. So we're going back. I know it looks like we go back a ways here, but this is really only like a couple days ago is back here. We bottomed out at 178. Now the stock is up here at 180. Now, just not that long ago, the stock was up at $200, but like most stocks this week has just been on a free fall. So I think there's a couple ways to play this. If you're already in Airbnb, you're in it at a higher price. This has proven just over the last week to be an area of support right here at 179. And the stock, after reporting earnings, did bounce. And I think as you get more positive news on travel, on vaccinations, on all that type of stuff, a stock like this is probably well positioned to have some upside. How much upside? I don't know, but it probably does have some upside. I think what this does, 179, 180 could be a hard stop for this stock. If you want to put a stop loss, I don't know if I'd do it right here at 180 since we wicked all the way down here to about 175. I think you can put that as your stop loss down there at 175. If you want to get in this one at 180-ish, 182, put a stop loss down at 175 and hope you can ride this all the way back up to $200 where it was literally just a couple days ago, like 4 or 5 days ago. So if the markets can rebound, get their footing, get the momentum back up, this, in my opinion, could be an interesting play. But again, I think on a stock like this, recently IPO price, not a lot of price action, you're going to want to set a stop loss. And I have it here right at that 175 mark. So that was Airbnb. Glad to keep you updated on this one. $118 billion market cap. So they're certainly going to have to grow into that one on the profit side. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Lots more videos to come. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck with your investments.